everybody, and welcome to the show. Kind of different format now. It's just me uploading messages to the internet, no longer affiliated with Reality Radio Network. I just figured that if I can't have a listener format, I'll just upload messages myself, and that way I can do it at my own time, my own convenience. Seems to be working out pretty well. Some people miss the show format. But the whole thing came down to where I couldn't have listeners calling in anymore, and so it didn't make sense to keep it at that point. I don't know if I'll ever go back to another type of radio network. I think that if I have to change locations or whatever comes down and being dependent on somebody else, I would rather just be able to take things in my own hands and upload things to my own website, take care of things that way. I may increase it. I may go once or twice or 3 times a week with uploading messages. Might even change it to a daily thing where I'm uploading messages daily, and so I'm just keeping my options open here. I stumble across things during the week and then set it aside and think I'll have to mention that during my next taping, and then sometimes I just don't get to that stuff. And so I think if it was a daily thing, maybe 20, 25 minutes a day, it might be easier. So give me some feedback on that. Just something I'm considering. I don't know why. I don't have enough work to do already, but it might be easier that way, keeping in touch with everybody. This week there's drills focusing on Charleston, South Carolina. They started yesterday, and they end on February 2nd, which is a high Satanist holiday. So there's a lot of activity going on in regards to Charleston, South Carolina. Many people thinking that this is going to be a repeat of last year, when an exercise they had last year about a sub-bombing, nuke bombing brought in on a ship was supposed to go live. And the general who exposed their plans to make that drill come live was fired. So he wouldn't have been fired, folks, if there wasn't some validity to what he was saying. And so this year, when they started announcing again that South Carolina was going to have drills, of course, a lot of eyebrows were raised. Also, a lot of federal activity built up in Houston. We know last summer that the BP explosion was I don't know if you want to call it a terrorist attack or a bombing. It certainly wasn't an accident. And so you have to look at the fact that they've been trying to destroy Houston. They had, I can't even remember the name of the hurricane that came after Katrina that was heading toward Houston, and that one was kind of put off. And so definitely heading towards Houston. I've seen the destruction of Houston and Dallas in the Bible codes. In fact, I've seen the destruction of almost every major city in the Bible codes. No years given, so I don't know the years, and we know that eventually every city on the earth is going to be flattened. So it's just not if, but a when. And, you don't know if it's going to happen this year or next year, if it's going to be involved with just the general earthquakes that flatten all the cities as the last days commence. So just something we have to keep our eyes on. It's not the job of a watchman, like I said last week, in regards to a lot of people asking me about Steve Quayle. Steve Quayle is a watchman, and it's not the job of a watchman to be right. It's the job of a watchman to sound the alarms, to let people know what can be coming, what can be happening. And I think a lot of people, especially with the internet the way it is today, pretty much on top of things, and you really have to stay focused on just what the Lord leads you to do. I mean, there's so many things I don't talk about as opposed to some of the things that I will bring up and talk about. And I can't go chasing after every inevitability that comes. There's going to be a lot of destructions coming. And the only thing I can do is pay attention to what the Lord leads me to, what He wants me to focus on, and talk about those things. The world could go to hell this week, and I feel a complete peace. So I don't know if these multiple attacks are going to take place this week. I don't know if Houston's going to actually get its bombing this week, or Dallas, or Lexington, or Richmond, or Charleston. But I just feel a complete peace this week, and so I guess we'll just have to wait and see. I don't think that the Lord wants us to be on edge. I mean, we're not to be fearful in the things man can do. We have the Lord. A good reason probably why I do feel at peace, because sometimes that isn't a good sign. Sometimes when you're at peace and everything around you is falling to hell, and you're thinking, I don't feel that, Why didn't the Lord tell me? Because you're at total peace at the time. So sometimes it's not a good warning either. As I've been stating on my blogger, a lot of interesting things going on with Washington. And you know what? Last year I said a lot of things about some of the cards and the routes they can take. And, of course, I always make more sense a year later than when I say something. If you go to OmegonsOrLiars.com, I have a site put up on the Omegans. And the Omegans are what the Antichrist refers to as his last days army, because he's Alpha and Omegan. And so his last days armies, he calls the Omegans. And, of course, this is the New Age agenda, the Al Gore agenda. And I have pictures of Al Gore on my website over there and talking about how he's their man that they've wanted to prop up. They would destroy our presidency with Bush and Cheney and take over our government and prop their own person up, which is Al Gore. And I've always said he's working in the backgrounds to not go to sleep on him, to keep your eye on him. And sure enough, I was reading some of their garbage they put out yesterday, and it's the same plan, to topple our government and put in Al Gore as the interim president to where the United States ultimately holds voting all over again. I don't think it's ever going to happen. Al Gore would foot the bill. Daniel says that the Antichrist would come in obtaining his flattery by kingdoms. He would never be given the honor of his kingdom. He would never be voted in, or he wouldn't. He was voted in, but never given the presidencies. George Bush stole it from him, and so he wasn't given the honor of being the president of the United States by popular vote. It was never handed to him. He won it, but it was never handed to him. And so that could fit the bill with Al Gore, folks. And so it's something to keep an eye on, because if he does come into power, he has proclaimed himself that he is the Omega Man. So a lot of red flags with Al Gore. And I've talked about him for years, always been a candidate. And I just don't get tunnel vision on one person, because we don't know how events are going to play throughout time. Events can change. We can go down one route and then turn around and go down another. So you have to keep focused on all the possible candidates, so that whatever does come down the pike, you're not caught off guard. You're not having tunnel vision, it's this person, and then get blindsided by the one that comes up behind you. So I've been warning about some of the things that we've been hearing in reverse speech in regards to Dick Cheney and George Bush. Apparently, the real George Bush Jr. no longer exists. I noticed a couple weeks ago when I started looking at pictures taken of him that you could tell obvious bulges in his skin at different places. And then the voice of the White House released an article stating that his skin had gotten so bad they have to massively cover it up with makeup when he's being seen in public. And so I have the voice of the White House's article here, and I want to read the part about what they talk about George Bush. And I'll start it here. Before he screwed up royally, Bush used to occasionally wander around the White House, he doesn't anymore, accompanied by his psychophantic aides, and would give staffers here a twisted grin and fire off some grotesque malapropism. No more. His face has aged 10 years. There is a haunted look in his eyes. His face is badly mottled and blotched, and he is